Ryan's office revenge.
The first time I heard him call our security protocols legacy paranoia, I knew we were heading for trouble. Brady Fletcher was standing in front of the classified systems monitor like he owned the place, gesturing at screens he couldn't even read, telling a room full of government contractors that we needed to embrace the cloud revolution. My name's Wade Morrison. I'm 49 years old, and I've been securing networks for defense contractors for 17 years. Before that, I spent 8 years in Navy IT, learning the hard way that when you're protecting national security data, there's no such thing as being too careful. Brady didn't know that history. Hell, Brady didn't know much of anything. He introduced himself with one of those handshakes that feels like grabbing a wet fish, all smile and no substance. "Call me Brady," he said, like we were gonna be best buddies. The guy reeked of expensive cologne and business school arrogance. Fresh MBA from Wharton, startup background, brought in as VP of Digital Transformation to modernize our approach. I watched him scan the room during that first meeting. Marketing, sales, business development. He lit up talking to those folks. Then his eyes landed on us, the security team, the guys who actually keep the lights on and the hackers out. His smile dimmed a little like he was looking at furniture that didn't match his vision. "We'll need to audit your workflows," he announced, waving his hand like he was blessing us. Efficiency is my middle name. I wanted to ask if ignorance was his first. See, I've been at Blackstone Defense for 17 years. Built half the security architecture from scratch when we were still using basic firewalls and hoping for the best. I've outlasted 3 CEOs, 5 CTOs, and more security scares than I care to count. Mentored dozens of engineers who've gone on to protect everything from power grids to satellite systems. I don't care about office politics or happy hour networking. I care that classified data stays classified and foreign adversaries stay locked out. But Brady cared about optics, about looking modern and cutting edge to the suits upstairs. His second day, he made the rounds like some corporate celebrity, tossing compliments like confetti. "Love the energy in here. This team really gets innovation. We're gonna disrupt some paradigms, folks." Empty words that evaporated the second they hit air. When he reached my corner of the floor, the part without motivational posters and standing desks, he squinted at my security monitoring dashboard. Real-time threat detection, intrusion alerts, the digital equivalent of a radar screen watching for incoming missiles. "And this is what exactly?" he asked. "Network security monitoring," I said without turning around. "Real-time threat assessment for classified systems." Whoa, he cut in, hands up like I'd pulled a weapon. "You're gonna have to dumb it down for me. I don't speak computer." He laughed at his own joke. Nobody else did. Brady just kept grinning like we were supposed to be charmed by his humility. "You know," he said, pointing at my screens, "we need to modernize this stuff. Make it user-friendly. Sexy, even." I finally looked at him. "You're talking about national security infrastructure." "Exactly," he said, completely missing the point. "If it looks this intimidating, how can we expect executive buy-in for budget increases?" That's when I saw it. The look people get when they realize you're not going to kiss their ring. That little twitch in the smile. I knew right then what I was to him. An obstacle to work around. The problem was, Brady didn't understand what he didn't understand. He thought our security protocols were just bureaucratic red tape. He thought our classified system requirements were suggestions. He thought outsourcing to the lowest bidder was good business sense. And worst of all, he assumed I was just another technical dinosaur with no business acumen and no spine. That week, he called our quarterly penetration testing fear-mongering. At the all-hands meeting, he said, "Do we really think foreign hackers care about us? We're not Google. We're not sexy enough to target." Nobody laughed. I glanced around to see if anyone else had just watched their job security evaporate. Rachel Hayes, one of my senior engineers, was gripping her coffee cup white-knuckled. Maxwell Rodriguez was staring at the ceiling. We were all thinking the same thing. This guy's gonna break something, and we'll be the ones blamed for it. Still, I kept my face neutral, nodded when required, even clapped when he ended with his trademark, "Let's disrupt mediocrity." But privately, I started documenting everything. Every email where he ignored our security assessments, every budget cut that eliminated critical redundancies, every vendor he approved without proper background checks. I built a digital paper trail, not for revenge, for insurance. Because I've seen guys like Brady before. They blow in like hurricanes, rearrange everything that was working fine, fire the wrong people, and leave just before the roof caves in. When it does, they blame the architect. The memo arrived at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line, Cost Optimization Initiative, Immediate Implementation, Classic Brady. Lots of buzzwords, fancy charts, and phrases like streamlined efficiency and right-sizing our approach. Page 2 is where he stuck the knife in. Phase out proprietary security protocols for classified data management. Transition to Cloud Secure Pro for 40% cost savings. ROI projections attached. I stared at that line until my coffee went cold. Cloud Secure Pro. I knew that company. Small outfit, great marketing, terrible security. And worse, they had financial ties to a Chinese parent company that our intelligence contacts had been watching for years. Brady was proposing to put classified defense data on servers that could be accessed by foreign entities, all to save a few bucks on the quarterly budget. I printed the memo, walked down to the security office, and pulled up the classified vendor database. Cloud Secure Pro was right there in the red zone, companies with known or suspected foreign intelligence connections. Absolutely forbidden for any government work above basic administrative tasks. I wrote up a formal objection, 3 pages, single-spaced, with citations from federal regulations and intelligence briefings. I even included photos from a Pentagon cybersecurity conference where they specifically warned about this exact company. Brady's response came back in 20 minutes. Thanks for the input, but we need to think bigger picture here. Sometimes progress requires calculated risks with classified data, from a guy who couldn't tell the difference between a firewall and a router. That same week, he rejected our annual security audit, calling it outdated thinking. We were wasting precious developer hours testing for threats that probably didn't exist. You think the Chinese military is really trying to hack our little company? He said with a laugh. We're not that important. Rachel found me after that meeting. Should I start updating my resume? She whispered. I started building my insurance policy that night. Not sabotage, I'm not a criminal. I'm an engineer. What I did was elegant, legal, and utterly foolproof. I activated a security protocol buried deep in our federal compliance documentation, something I'd written during our last DoD certification review, hidden in subsection 47C of the Security Procedures Manual. It was called the Critical Security Officer Departure Protocol. Dry, boring language that basically said this: if the senior security architect determines that classified systems are being compromised by management decisions that violate federal regulations, he can trigger an emergency lockdown that transfers all security credentials to federal escrow until a formal review is completed. I'd built it years ago as a safeguard against exactly this situation. A legal nuclear option that could only be used when national security was genuinely at risk. And Brady's Cloud Secure Pro proposal definitely qualified. The beauty of it was the delay mechanism. Once triggered, it didn't shut anything down immediately. Instead, it started a 72-hour countdown during which all security certificates would begin expiring in sequence. Normal operations would continue until the cascade reached critical mass, then everything would lock down simultaneously. By then, it would be too late to stop without federal intervention. I triggered it quietly, cleanly, with a single encrypted command buried in routine maintenance logs. No alarms, no warnings, just a timestamp in a file that nobody else knew how to read. Then I sat back and waited for Brady to hang himself with his own rope. The meeting happened on a Thursday. Brady had booked the main conference room under infrastructure modernization discussion, which sounded harmless enough. I walked in expecting another PowerPoint about synergy and digital transformation. Instead, I found an execution squad in business casual. Brady sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, coffee in one hand, smugness in the other. Around him were 3 junior engineers, 2 analysts from IT, and his favorite enabler from HR, Stephanie Miller, the one who says just trying to maintain team cohesion right before filing a performance complaint. Let's keep this casual, Brady started, flipping through a thin folder with my name on it. Just want to get a sense of where everyone stands on our modernization efforts. I didn't sit. Just leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed, watching him fumble through his rehearsed charm. He started with the usual theater, a few compliments about team output. Shallow praise for the server migration we'd completed 6 months ago without a single security breach. Then he pivoted. One thing I've been hearing, he said, stretching the word like taffy, is that we might be over-investing in certain legacy approaches, maybe clinging to old protocols that don't fit our modern threat landscape. He glanced at me like we were sharing an inside joke. We weren't. Wade, you've been with the company, what, nearly 2 decades? 17 years, I said, plus 8 in the Navy. 0 security breaches under my watch. He nodded, mock impressed. That's incredible, truly. But sometimes those long tenures come with, how do I say it, a certain inflexibility, a reluctance to embrace change. He looked around the room for support. I mean, we're still using proprietary encryption protocols that were designed in the Bush administration. Isn't that a little retro? I stared at him. Those protocols are the reason Chinese hackers haven't stolen our classified data. Stephanie shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable. One of the junior engineers, Jordan Walsh, looked down at his laptop like he was ashamed to be breathing the same air. Brady laughed. See, that's exactly the kind of fear-based thinking I'm talking about. Passion is great, Wade, but it needs balance. And to be honest, when I look at your salary versus output metrics, he trailed off with a shrug. There it was, the knife, sloppy but sharp enough. Listen, he continued, nobody's saying you haven't earned your spot, but maybe it's time to think about creating space for new voices, fresh perspectives, more cost-effective solutions. Translation, you're expensive, old, and in the way. I didn't respond, just looked at the file he was holding, mostly HR printouts and budget spreadsheets with red marks. He hadn't read my security assessments, my threat analyses, or the federal compliance reports I'd authored. He wasn't evaluating performance. He was building a paper trail for when the layoffs came. The moment that changed everything came during the government client presentation the next afternoon. We were showing our capabilities to a team from the Defense Intelligence Agency, walking them through our security infrastructure. These weren't junior analysts. These were people who could make or break our contract renewals. Brady decided to modernize the presentation on the fly. While I was explaining our multi-layered encryption protocols, he jumped in with his trademark condescending smile. What Wade's describing here works fine, but honestly, folks, we need to think about this differently. This whole approach, it's very 1995, very analog thinking in a digital world. The room went dead silent. The lead DIA analyst, a woman named Carol Stevens, who'd been in intelligence longer than Brady had been alive, just stared at him. Are you suggesting our current security protocols are outdated? She asked. Brady grinned wider. I'm saying we can do better, smarter, more efficiently. Wade here still thinks like it's the Cold War, but we're fighting different battles now. That was it, the line in the sand, not just undermining me in private, but doing it in front of people whose respect I'd spent 17 years earning, in front of people who trusted me to keep classified data away from hostile foreign governments. I stood up slowly, closed my laptop with a soft click, and looked directly at Carol Stevens. Ma'am, if you have any questions about our current security protocols or their effectiveness, please feel free to contact me directly. My number's on the briefing materials. Then I looked at Brady. I'll be taking lunch now. I walked out while he was still trying to explain his modernization vision to a room full of intelligence professionals who'd seen more real threats in a week than he'd seen in his entire career. Back at my desk, I opened my secure partition and typed a single line to our federal liaison. Critical Security Officer Departure Protocol activated per Section 47C. Classified system lockdown commencing in 72 hours pending DOD review. Then I walked down to HR and handed Stephanie my resignation. Not a dramatic speech or angry letter, just a simple form citing irreconcilable differences regarding federal security compliance. She looked confused. But the meeting, Brady said you were going to consider the feedback. I considered it, I said. Tell Brady his Cloud Secure Pro proposal violates Federal Regulation 32 CFR 117. He can explain that to the Pentagon when they call. I cleaned out my desk, grabbed my personal laptop, and walked out the same way I'd come in 17 years earlier. No fanfare, no goodbyes. Just a man who'd done his job right until someone tried to stop him. The cascade started 6 hours later, just like clockwork. First, the automated certificate renewals began failing silently. Nothing dramatic, just routine security handshakes timing out by a few milliseconds, the kind of thing that gets logged but doesn't trigger alarms unless you know what to look for. Then the classified data access began throwing authentication errors. Users would try to log in and get bounced with vague system maintenance messages. IT assumed it was a temporary glitch and told people to try again later. By hour 12, the backup security protocols started failing. Systems that should have kicked in automatically just didn't, because Brady had eliminated the redundancies that would have caught these failures, calling them inefficient overlaps. The help desk lit up like a Christmas tree. The engineering Slack channel turned into a panic room. And Brady? Brady was nowhere to be found. Rachel figured it out first. She'd always been sharp. Around hour 18, she posted in the emergency channel. Security certificates are expiring in sequence. This isn't random. Someone triggered a planned lockdown. Maxwell replied, "Can we stop it?" "Not without the master encryption keys," she wrote back. And those just went into federal escrow. That's when someone remembered the note I'd left on my monitor. Not dramatic or bitter, just a yellow sticky note with 5 words. Check Section 47C Compliance Protocols. I watched it all unfold from a coffee shop across town, reading their Slack messages through a legacy admin account they'd forgotten to revoke. Not because I was gloating. I was making sure my safeguards worked properly and that no actual classified data was at risk. The federal call came at hour 20. Pentagon Cybersecurity Division wanting to know why classified systems were going into emergency lockdown. Brady tried to explain it was just a technical hiccup, but the voice on the other end wasn't buying it. "Sir, our records show you attempted to migrate classified data to an unauthorized cloud provider with known foreign intelligence connections. Is that correct?" The silence stretched for about 10 seconds. Then Brady started stammering about cost efficiency and modernization initiatives. "Sir, you're currently in violation of federal regulations 32 CFR 117, 32 CFR 2002, and the Computer Security Act of 1987. We're initiating an immediate security review. By hour 24, everything classified was locked down tight, no access for anyone until the DoD finished their investigation." Brady tried calling me 6 times that day. I'd already blocked his number. The investigation took 3 weeks. They went through every email, every decision, every vendor proposal. They interviewed the whole team, reviewed all our security protocols, and examined Brady's modernization plan line by line. What they found wasn't pretty. Not only had Brady proposed moving classified data to a compromised vendor, he'd also eliminated security audits that were federally mandated, ignored multiple written warnings about compliance violations, attempted to remove a senior security officer for refusing to break federal law, publicly undermined security protocols in front of government clients. Their conclusion was brutally simple. Wade Morrison followed proper federal security protocols and activated legally mandated safeguards when national security was threatened. Brady Fletcher violated federal regulations repeatedly and endangered classified information for cost savings. Brady's security clearance was revoked permanently. Can't work for any defense contractor ever again. The company had to pay $2.3 million in federal penalties and underwent 6 months of enhanced oversight. Brady got fired so fast his access card stopped working before he reached the parking garage. But the real satisfaction came from Carol Stevens' follow-up call to our CEO. She made it clear that the DIA had been impressed with our security protocols, right up until Brady started talking. His comments about 1995 thinking had raised serious questions about the company's commitment to protecting classified information. The CEO, who'd been Brady's biggest supporter, suddenly discovered that modern thinking doesn't mean much when you lose $50 million in government contracts because your VP insulted the intelligence community. Rachel called me the day after Brady got fired. He cleaned out his office in 20 minutes, she said. Didn't say goodbye to anyone, just grabbed his motivational posters and left. "How's the team doing?" I asked. "Better. Maxwell's been acting as interim security lead, and he's good. Really good. Says he learned from the best." That made me smile. "And the systems?" "Back online as of yesterday. Federal audit team said our protocols were actually more secure than most contractors they review." Funny how that works. It was funny in a way that wasn't actually funny at all. The phone rang while I was packing for a weekend trip to see my brother in Virginia. Unknown number with a DC area code and a government prefix I recognized. "Wade Morrison, this is Colonel Patterson from Pentagon Cyber Defense Acquisition. We've been reviewing your work at Blackstone." I could hear keyboards clicking in the background, the low hum of a secure facility. "We've read your security assessments, your threat analyses, your compliance, documentation. That's not just good engineering, that's the kind of disciplined thinking we need more of." He paused, and I could almost hear him choosing his words carefully. "We'd like to offer you a position. Chief Security Officer for a new joint task force. Military contractors, federal agencies, private sector partners, full autonomy over security protocols. And Wade, yes sir, build it right, build it to last. Don't worry about the budget hawks or the modernization consultants. Just build it secure." I took the job, not because of the salary bump or the prestige, though both were substantial. I took it because they understood something Brady never did. When you're protecting national security, there's no such thing as being too careful. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brady had spent months trying to push me out for being inflexible and stuck in the past. Now the Pentagon was hiring me specifically because I refused to compromise on security fundamentals. 3 months into my new role, I ran into Carol Stevens at a cybersecurity conference in Arlington. She was giving a presentation on emerging threats from state-sponsored hackers. "Wade," she called out during the coffee break, "how's the new position treating you?" "Can't complain," I said. Though I have to ask, what made you call the CEO after Brady's presentation that day? She laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. 27 years in intelligence, Wade. I've seen what happens when people prioritize cost savings over security. When someone stands up in front of government clients and calls proven protocols outdated thinking, that's a red flag the size of Texas. She sipped her coffee, then added, "Plus, we'd been monitoring Cloud Secure Pro for 18 months. The fact that your company was even considering them told us everything we needed to know about Brady's judgment. You knew about their Chinese connections? We know about everyone's connections. That's our job. The question was, Blackstone's leadership was smart enough to avoid obvious traps. Brady answered that question pretty definitively. That afternoon, I got a text from Rachel. She'd been promoted to senior security architect at Blackstone, taking over most of my old responsibilities. The message was short. "Thought you'd want to know. Brady's working at a retail software company now, optimizing checkout processes for shopping apps." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The retail industry wasn't exactly forgiving of people who'd been blacklisted from government work. His LinkedIn profile, which I may have checked once or twice, showed a series of increasingly junior positions at increasingly smaller companies. The golden boy trajectory had turned into a death spiral. But that wasn't the most satisfying part of the story. 6 months after I'd started my new job, Maxwell called with news that made my whole week. Blackstone had just won the largest cybersecurity contract in company history, a $180 million 5-year deal to protect critical defense infrastructure across 3 military branches. They specifically requested our proprietary encryption protocols, Maxwell said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. The same ones Brady wanted to eliminate. Turns out the Pentagon thinks our Bush administration security measures are exactly what they need for modern threats. The contract included a requirement that all security decisions be approved by someone with demonstrated expertise in federal compliance protocols and a proven track record of protecting classified information. In other words, no more Bradys. "The CEO mentioned you in his speech to the board," Maxwell continued. "Said hiring you was the best decision the company ever made, and letting you walk away was almost the worst." Almost? Well, keeping Brady would have been worse. I laughed. "How's the team doing?" "Good. Really good. Jordan Walsh turned out to be a natural at threat analysis. Just needed someone to take him seriously instead of treating him like furniture, and Rachel's been mentoring 2 new hires who actually understand what we do here. And the culture? Different. Better. The new VP is an engineer, former NSA. She asks questions instead of giving speeches. Wants to understand our protocols before she changes them. Revolutionary concept, right?" That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, thinking about the path that had brought me here. Brady had tried to marginalize me for being experienced, for valuing proven methods over flashy innovations. He'd seen my caution as weakness, my thoroughness as inefficiency. What he'd never understood was that experience isn't just accumulated knowledge, it's accumulated wisdom. It's knowing the difference between real improvements and shiny distractions. It's understanding that some things are built to last because they work, not because they're old. In the Navy, we had a saying, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it is broke, fix it right." The first time. Brady's generation seemed to believe that everything was broken by default, that new was automatically better than proven. They were wrong. The security protocols Brady had mocked as 1995 thinking were still protecting classified data, while his modern solutions had been exposed as security nightmares. The inefficient overlaps he'd eliminated were the exact redundancies that prevented catastrophic failures. My phone buzzed with a message from my new deputy, a sharp young woman who'd come over from the CIA. "Wade, just finished reviewing the quarterly threat assessment. Your protocols caught 3 separate intrusion attempts this week. Foreign actors trying exactly the kind of attacks that Cloud Secure Pro's vulnerabilities would have enabled." I typed back, "Good catch. Write it up for the monthly brief." The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows across my yard. Tomorrow I'd go back to protecting the country's secrets from people who wanted to steal them. Brady would go back to optimizing shopping cart algorithms for people who wanted to buy shoes online. Sometimes experience beats innovation. Sometimes the old ways work precisely because they're old, tested, proven, survivor of every challenge thrown at them. And sometimes, just sometimes, the dinosaurs get to watch the meteors burn up in the atmosphere while they keep doing what they've always done, surviving. In a world obsessed with disruption, the real power lies in knowing what should never be disrupted, and having the backbone to defend it when shallow thinkers mistake wisdom for weakness. They called me a dinosaur, but dinosaurs ruled the earth for 165 million years, while meteors like Brady burn out in seconds, leaving nothing but crater marks where competence used to stand.